That camera? Hi everyone, I'm Lori Ivy with Herb Frequency and Immerse Eye Media, and we are at the Midway in San Francisco, California at this amazing New Year's Eve event. And we have the pleasure of being here with Alex and Alison Gray, who are painting live this weekend. And we're here just to ask a few questions and talk about the book. How are you guys doing?
Great. How are you doing tonight?
I'm really wonderful. Thank you for asking. Are you enjoying yourself?
Oh, this is the best ever. And no doubt about it. It's a beautiful party.
Yes, it's a lot of fun. And earlier last night, whenever I was in the other room, I happened to pick up your book, Art Psalms, and I was thumbing through it today, and I stumbled upon a photo of you with Andy Warhol. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so amazing. Was he a creative icon for you?
I believe so. He was a Midwest boy that made good, you know. So I always thought that Andy kind of personified the 60s and certain kind of pop sensibility. But I never really felt that my work really was aiming at that. But I did aim my work at the 99%. Yeah.
That's really wonderful. Thank you for sharing that story. Allyson, I know that you are a huge inspiration to a lot of women, and I have a lot of young girls that are on my page that I talk to, and there's a lot of young girls that are activating in their ascension, and they're also finding themselves and embracing their creativity. What advice do you have for young women so that they can feel comfortable with who they are while exploring their creativity?
Yes. I think it's so important for women to stand up, to get up, to speak, to lead, to be leaders, to be successful, and to make beautiful things, you know, beautiful music, beautiful art, beautiful dance, and to celebrate their spirit through their creativity. So I think that women have to stand up and be such good speakers, you know. We want to see as many women TED Talks as men TED Talks, like that. So anyway, and write more books and things like that, which is something that I tell myself because I'm always working on a book, aren't I?
You are.
That's really wonderful. Thank you so much. And I have one last question for you, Alex. And it was inspired by a post that I saw from a young man the other day on Facebook. And it kind of follows my question with the young women. He was just talking about how through this ascension process, he's transcending his way of knowing life and his thought processes. And it's a difficult transition for all of us to go through. And one of the things that he was talking about is that how he is sort of in this rut. He's lost his creative spark. And he was like, you know, I don't want to turn to alcohol and drugs. So what do I do to get my creativity back since I've lost my spark? And what can you say to people that are going through this process?
Well, we did create a actual audio about the visionary artist that goes through vision practices. They're things that you can imagine with your eyes closed and with your headphones on, and it takes you through these kind of steps that may spark images. And there's so many different practices that are available. They're somewhat related to the Vajrayana vision practices that we learned as Tibetan Buddhist students. So, and they're like visualization techniques as well. So the shamanic drumming and things like that, all of these things can be done without any special sacraments or medicines. But then there's all the way up to the psychedelic journey of so many different kinds, that these things can open one up to the realm of the imagination and to finding what your mission with your creativity might be. Because I believe that everybody has a special spark their soul wants to express through their creative life. And so they just need to turn inside and listen for the gift. And that will lead them. you know.
I'd like to make a statement about that
Yeah.
too. Is that it's really wonderful to have a creative life, and I think it's more than just wonderful. It's a health factor. And if you don't have a creative life, or if you always are saying, "Oh, I think of myself as an artist, but I'm not doing anything about it," it's a blockage that's not flowing. So I really do recommend art as a spiritual practice. I've been doing that all my life. My work is basically a meditation. But, whatever it is that calls you, like whether it's dance or whatever, to be creative is very, very important. And to do that, you have to practice. And so that's the way to begin, is basically to set a time and a place, get your materials together, and take action. So that's it. It's just like, you just have to have a time, place, and you're there. I mean, you have to have a subject. You have to have content. You have to study on that. We get our content a lot of times from visions.
Yeah. Well, for me, the most important subject is the subject of God contact, basically. It's like, what is your spiritual touchstone? What was it that tipped you over into God consciousness on some level, so that that's now the path. That you're on the path now, and so you have to be, and you have to aspire to be a better person while you're aspiring to come closer to the spiritual source that is moving through everything. And so the more you can be clear to that, and be open to hearing what it wants to express through you, rather than what you're forcing some idea. You have to be a little compliant and a little, okay, well, what would you like? And then, because I think we're working with spiritual forces, that if we would just be open and receptive to listening to their message, quite often it's an elevating message. If it's not, then you're not listening to the right ones. And you try to turn down the volume on them, and it's most often our negative ego. Ow. Or some parasitic whatever that somebody got somewhere. So, but easily removed with the right light beings, right? Well, you could say more about that.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I talk a lot about with people, is understanding their mind and their channel. It's our human self and what I call the human and the alien. It's the person we've always known, and then it's this intuitional channel that we have, and it's the guidance that you just talked about. And I always tell people say, "What do I do?" And I say, "Get quiet." Because humans aren't thinkers, we're actually receivers of guided truth. And when we learn to clear out the humanistic ways, we can then hear the channel so that we can connect to our law of attraction, manifestations. Then we start to understand what living a mystic life is all about.
Well, we were talking yesterday on stage about finding the hedonic set point. Because it was something a transhumanist was talking about, was like, what is your ecstatic pitch, beyond which is actually too much and people will lock you up or do something. What's the crescendo of happiness?
Yeah.
And so,
how happy are you allowed to be? And how openly happy? Like we have a friend who was dancing in the fountains in the city and got hauled away to the loony bin. You know what I'm saying? So you have to watch out for, like, how happy can you be? Right.
Yeah, and how out of control are you appearing? So finding those balance points and things like that. One of the things we were...
Hedonic set point.
Yeah, the that ecstatic pitch. Then it reminded me of Satchitananda, you know, that wisdom or truth, consciousness, and bliss. That's the nature of the ground of being. And so, with that vast expanse, that ocean of awareness that we're drawing from and that we're just expressions of, then that it means it's pure from the beginning, and it's just veils that we need to remove to access it. And so, anyway, I'm always grateful to meet sisters and brothers on the path. You know,
Thank you
each
so much.
in our eccentric ways. I believe we're headed in a positive direction.
I agree too, definitely. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to talk with us. And also, we want to give a big thanks to Euphoric Conceptions for hosting this event. Thank you so much. Happy New Year, guys. Have a great night. Great. That was so great. Oh my gosh. Thank